I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by blueprints and zoning regulations when the email notification popped up. It was a routine check of our joint account, something I did every month to ensure everything was in order. But this time, something was off. A series of transactions, all substantial, were listed under Nate's name. They were not the usual grocery or utility payments. Instead, they were payments to a name I didn't recognize, and they had been going on for months. My name is Alara, and I'm an urban planner. I love my job, creating spaces that bring people together. But right now, all I could feel was a knot tightening in my stomach. Nate and I had always been open about our finances, or so I thought. This discovery felt like a crack in the foundation of my life, threatening to crumble everything I'd worked so hard to build. I tried to shake off the unease that settled over me, telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a business expense or a surprise he was planning. But the amounts were too large and too frequent to be anything innocent. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, the numbers blurring together as my mind raced. "Hey, Alara, you okay?" Tessa's voice pulled me back to reality. She stood at my office door, her usual smile replaced with concern. "Yeah, just a bit distracted," I replied, trying to sound casual. But Tessa knew me too well to be fooled. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Distracted by what?" she pressed, settling into the chair across from me. I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But Tessa had been my rock through so many storms. "It's Nate. I found some transactions on our account. They don't make sense." Her eyebrows shot up. "Have you talked to him about it?" "Not yet. I don't want to jump to conclusions," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were a flimsy excuse. Tessa nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Well, maybe it's nothing. But if it's bothering you, you should ask him." I nodded, though the idea of confronting Nate filled me with a sense of dread. What if it was something serious? What if it was the beginning of an unraveling I wasn't prepared to face? Later that evening, I sat across from Nate at the dinner table, the usual comfort of our shared meal tainted by the questions swirling in my mind. He was talking about his day, something about a project deadline, but I barely heard him. I was too focused on the way he avoided eye contact, the slight tension in his shoulders. "Nate," I interrupted, my voice firmer than I felt. "I noticed some transactions on our account. They're pretty significant." He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Oh, those. Yeah, I meant to tell you. It's just some investments I've been making." Investments. The word hung between us, heavy and unsatisfying. "Investments?" I echoed, trying to keep my tone even. He nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just trying to build something for our future." I wanted to believe him desperately. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of something that made my skin prickle with unease. "Can you show me the details? I'd love to know more about it." He hesitated just for a moment, but it was enough. "Sure, I'll show you later. It's all pretty boring stuff." I forced a smile, though my mind was screaming. Later. It was always later. And I couldn't shake the feeling that later would never come. That night, as I lay in bed beside him, listening to his steady breathing, I knew I couldn't let it go. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, and the gnawing fear that there was more beneath the surface than I dared to imagine. I decided then that I needed to know the truth, no matter the cost. As I drifted into a restless sleep, I resolved to dig deeper, to uncover whatever secrets Nate was hiding. Because if I didn't, I feared I might lose everything I held dear. The next morning, I woke with a sense of determination. I would find out what was going on, and I wouldn't stop until I had answers. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would change everything I thought I knew about my life and the man I loved. The morning after my discovery, I found myself at Lorraine's doorstep, clutching a tray of muffins as a peace offering. Lorraine had always been warm, treating me like her own daughter. But lately, she'd been distant, her calls less frequent, her hugs less tight. I needed to know if she had noticed anything strange about Nate, too. Lorraine opened the door, surprise flickering across her face before she pulled me into a hug. It was warm, but there was a hesitation I couldn't ignore. "Alara, what a lovely surprise," she said, ushering me inside. The house smelled of lavender and fresh coffee, a comforting mix that reminded me of simpler times. We settled in her cozy kitchen, and I watched her pour coffee into two mismatched mugs. "How are things with you and Nate?" she asked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "We're working through some things," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Have you noticed anything different about him lately?" Lorraine's hand paused mid-pour, a slight tremor that spoke volumes. "He's been busy, I suppose. The work can be demanding." There it was again, that hint of something unsaid. "He's been making some big financial decisions," I said, trying to gauge her reaction. She nodded too quickly. "Nate's always been ambitious. I'm sure he has a plan." A plan. I wanted to believe that, but the doubt gnawed at me. "I just wish he'd talk to me about it," I admitted, my voice softer. Lorraine reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. "Men can be foolish sometimes, Alara. But Nate loves you. I'm sure he'll come around." I wanted to believe her, but the uncertainty lingered. As I left her house, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lorraine knew more than she was letting on. Her words were reassuring, but the tension in her eyes told a different story. Back at home, I found Nate in his office, his brow furrowed in concentration as he typed away. I watched him for a moment, trying to reconcile the man I loved with the stranger he seemed to be becoming. "Nate!" I called softly, stepping into the room. He looked up, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey, everything okay?" I nodded, though my heart was pounding. "I went to see your mom today." His fingers paused over the keyboard, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. "Oh? How is she?" "She's good. We talked about you." I watched him carefully, hoping for a sign, anything that would make sense of the knots in my stomach. Nate leaned back in his chair, his expression guarded. "And she said you've been busy. I wish you'd talk to me about what's going on." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Alara, I'm trying to handle it. I don't want to worry you." "But I am worried," I said, my voice firmer than before. "I'm your wife, Nate. We're supposed to handle things together." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw a crack in his defenses. But just as quickly it was gone. "I promise I'll explain everything soon." That promise hung in the air, fragile and unconvincing. I nodded, though my mind was already racing ahead, plotting my next move. If Nate wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd have to find it myself. Later that night, I called Tessa, my heart pounding as I filled her in on my conversation with Lorraine and Nate's evasiveness. "This doesn't sound good, Alara," she said, her voice crackling over the line. "What's your next step?" "I need to dig deeper," I said, determination hardening my resolve. "I can't keep living in this uncertainty." "Do you want me to help?" Tessa offered, her loyalty unwavering. I hesitated, knowing the risk but needing her support. "Yes. I could use all the help I can get." As we hung up, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever Nate was hiding, I was going to find out. And with Tessa by my side, I knew I wasn't alone in this fight. The next morning, I woke with a plan. I would start by looking into Nate's recent activities, checking his emails and phone records, anything that might give me a clue. It was a step I never thought I'd have to take, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Little did I know, the truth I was about to uncover would be more shocking than I could have ever imagined, setting me on a path that would test every ounce of strength I had. I sat at my computer, the room dimly lit by the glow of the screen. My heart pounded as I navigated through Nate's email account, the one he never mentioned. It had taken a few guesses and a lot of nerve to crack his password, but here I was, staring at a digital Pandora's box. The first few emails were mundane, work updates, newsletters, spam. But then I found them. A thread of messages with a woman named Emily. My breath caught as I clicked on one, my eyes scanning the words that confirmed my worst fears. "Can't wait to see you this weekend. Miss you so much," read one email, signed with a heart emoji. My stomach twisted as I read on, each message a dagger, revealing a relationship that was far more than just friendship. Emily. I'd never heard of her, but she seemed to know Nate intimately. The emails spoke of shared weekends, whispered secrets, plans for a future that didn't include me. My hands shook as I closed the laptop, the betrayal cutting deeper than I'd imagined. I needed air, space to think. I grabbed my coat and headed out, the cool evening air doing little to calm the storm inside me. I found myself walking to Tessa's apartment, my feet moving on autopilot. She opened the door, her face immediately falling as she saw mine. "Alara, what happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. "I found his emails," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "He's been seeing someone else." Tessa's eyes widened in shock, but she quickly pulled me into a hug. "Oh, Alara, I'm so sorry." We sat on her couch, the reality of my situation settling in like a heavy fog. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice cracking. "You don't have to decide anything right now," Tessa said gently. "But you need to confront him." I nodded, though the thought of facing Nate filled me with dread. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath me. "I don't even know who he is anymore." Tessa squeezed my hand. "You're strong, Alara. You'll get through this." Her words were a balm, but the path ahead felt impossibly daunting. I stayed with her that night, unable to face Nate, unable to pretend everything was normal. The next day, I returned home, my mind made up. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Nate was in the kitchen, sipping coffee, his demeanor casual, as if our world wasn't about to implode. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He looked up, a hint of wariness in his eyes. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. "Who is Emily?" His expression shifted, a flicker of panic quickly masked by feigned confusion. "Emily? What are you talking about?" "I saw the emails, Nate. All of them," I said, my voice rising with each word. "You've been lying to me." He set his mug down, his facade crumbling. "Alara, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you're married to someone else? That you've been living a double life?" The words tumbled out, raw and accusatory. Nate's shoulders slumped, the fight leaving him. "It's complicated." Complicated. The word felt like a slap. "You think?" I snapped, anger finally breaking through the numbness. "How long has this been going on?" He hesitated, and in that moment I knew the truth was worse than I'd imagined. "A few years," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "Years." My world tilted, the betrayal cutting deeper than any wound. "Why, Nate? Why would you do this?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, his voice desperate. "I was in a bad place, and—" I cut him off, unable to hear more excuses. "You've been lying to me, to your family. How could you?" He reached for me, but I stepped back, the distance between us suddenly insurmountable. "I'm sorry, Alara. I never wanted to hurt you." The apology felt hollow, a bandage on a gaping wound. "I need time," I said, my voice breaking. "I can't do this right now." I turned and walked away, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on me. As I left the house, I realized that justice and revenge were no longer abstract concepts. They were my reality, and I was determined to find a way to reclaim my life from the wreckage Nate had left behind. I returned to work, trying to bury myself in the comforting chaos of urban planning. But the betrayal lingered like a shadow, seeping into every corner of my mind. My colleagues noticed my distraction, but I brushed off their concern with forced smiles and half-hearted reassurances. The project I was working on, a new community park, had been my passion for months. It was supposed to be a place of connection and joy, a symbol of hope. But now it felt like just another task on a never-ending list, overshadowed by the turmoil in my personal life. One afternoon, as I was reviewing plans, my phone buzzed. It was Lorraine. Her voice was strained, a hint of something urgent beneath her usual calm. "Alara, can we meet?" she asked, skipping the pleasantries. "Of course," I replied, sensing the weight in her words. "Is everything okay?" She hesitated, and that pause spoke volumes. "I'll explain when we meet. Can you come over later?" I agreed, my curiosity piqued and my anxiety rising. What could be so important that she couldn't tell me over the phone? When I arrived at Lorraine's, she greeted me with a tight smile. We settled in her living room, the air thick with unspoken words. "I've been doing some thinking," she began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "About Nate and everything that's happened." I nodded, urging her to continue. "And I've been supporting him financially," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "He told me it was for you, for your career." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "For me?" I echoed, disbelief coloring my voice. She nodded, her eyes filled with regret. "I thought I was helping, but now I'm not so sure." The room seemed to close in around me, the implications of her revelation settling heavily on my shoulders. Nate had not only betrayed me but had used Lorraine's generosity to cover his tracks. "I'm so sorry, Alara," Lorraine said, her voice breaking. "I didn't know." I reached out, squeezing her hand. "It's not your fault. He's been lying to both of us." We sat in silence, the weight of our shared betrayal hanging between us. It was a turning point, a moment that forced me to reevaluate everything I thought I knew about Nate and our marriage. "I need to confront him," I said finally, determination hardening my resolve. "I can't let this continue." Lorraine nodded, her expression fierce. "And I'll be right there with you. We deserve answers." As I left her house, a plan began to form. I would gather more evidence, confront Nate with the truth, and demand accountability. It was time to take control of my life, to stop being the victim of his deceit. The following days were a blur of activity. I spent hours combing through bank statements, emails, anything that could give me more insight into Nate's double life. Meanwhile, Tessa helped me piece together a timeline, her support unwavering. But just as I felt I was gaining ground, an unexpected twist shattered my fragile sense of control. I received a call from Harold Mercer, a name I recognized from Nate's emails. He was Emily's father. "Alara, I'm not sure how to say this," Harold began, his voice filled with an unfamiliar tension. "But I think there's something you need to know about Nate." My heart pounded as I listened, each word confirming my worst fears. Nate had married Emily under false pretenses, using Lorraine's money to fund a life I knew nothing about. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Because Emily passed away recently," Harold said, grief threading through his words. "And I found some documents that didn't add up. Nate's been lying to us too." The revelation hit me like a tidal wave, the magnitude of Nate's betrayal more profound than I'd imagined. I thanked Harold, promising to keep in touch, though my mind was already spinning with the implications. This new information shifted everything. Nate's deceit was deeper and more calculated than I'd realized, affecting not just me but another family. The stakes were higher, the need for justice more urgent. I met with Lorraine and Tessa that evening, sharing what I'd learned. Together, we devised a plan to confront Nate, to hold him accountable for the web of lies he'd spun. As I prepared for the confrontation, I felt a shift within me. The desire for revenge was tempered by a deeper need for justice, not just for myself but for everyone Nate had hurt. It was time to face him, to demand the truth, and to reclaim my life from the chaos he'd created. The day of the funeral arrived, a somber occasion clouded by the storm of revelations and deceit. Lorraine and I had decided it was the perfect setting to confront Nate. The irony of exposing his lies at a funeral for a mother who wasn't even dead was not lost on us. We arrived together, the tension between us a shared burden. Lorraine's face was set in determination, her usual warmth replaced by a steely resolve. I felt the same fire burning within me, fueled by the need for justice and the desire to reclaim control over my life. The Mercers were there, Harold and Diana, dressed in black, their faces etched with grief. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for them, unwitting victims of Nate's web of lies. As we entered the hall, Nate spotted us. For a moment, I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes before he masked it with a smile. He approached us, his demeanor as charming as ever, but I could see the cracks beneath the surface. "Lorraine, Alara, I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice smooth but lacking sincerity. Lorraine didn't waste any time. "We need to talk, Nate. Now." He glanced around, the tension between us palpable. "Can it wait?" "This isn't the time or place." I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "No, Nate. It can't wait. Reluctantly, he led us to a quieter corner, away from the mourners. The moment we were out of earshot, Lorraine turned on him, her voice low and fierce. "How could you do this, Nate? To us, to them." He opened his mouth, but no excuse came. Instead, he looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Alara, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to go this far." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I said, my voice breaking. "You've lied to everyone. You've used your mother's money to fund a life I knew nothing about." Nate ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "I was in over my head. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out." Lorraine shook her head, disappointment heavy in her gaze. "You've hurt so many people, Nate. This isn't something you can just fix." The conversation was interrupted by Harold's approach, his expression a mix of sorrow and anger. "What's going on here?" I hesitated, unsure of how to explain without causing more pain. But Lorraine stepped in, her voice gentle but firm. "Harold, there's something you need to know about Nate." As she spoke, revealing the truth of Nate's deceit, I watched Harold's face shift from confusion to disbelief. Diana joined us, her eyes wide with shock as the reality of Nate's betrayal sank in. Nate's shoulders slumped, the weight of his actions finally crashing down on him. "I never meant for any of this to happen," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Harold's response was cold, his words cutting through the air like a knife. "You've torn our family apart, Nate. How could you?" Confrontation left Nate reeling, his charm stripped away to reveal a man lost in his own lies. As he stood there, exposed and vulnerable, I realized that my desire for revenge had been replaced by a need for closure, for healing. But just as I thought the worst was over, an unexpected twist shattered any illusion of resolution. Diana turned to me, her voice trembling with a new revelation. "Alara, there's something else. Emily was pregnant when she passed." The words hung in the air, a new layer of betrayal that took my breath away. Nate had not only deceived us but had left a child without a father, a family without answers. I looked at Nate, my heart aching with a mix of anger and pity. "What have you done?" I asked, my voice raw with emotion. He couldn't meet my gaze, his silence a confirmation of his guilt. The situation had spiraled beyond anything I could have imagined, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew about justice and revenge. As we left the hall, I felt Lorraine's hand on my shoulder, her presence a comforting anchor in the chaos. "We'll get through this, Alara," she said softly, her words a promise of solidarity. In that moment, I understood that justice wasn't just about retribution. It was about finding strength in the face of betrayal, about rebuilding from the ashes of trust. And as I walked away from the wreckage of Nate's lies, I knew I had the support I needed to face whatever came next. The aftermath of the funeral confrontation left me feeling hollow, as if the ground beneath me had vanished. The revelation of Emily's pregnancy was a blow I hadn't anticipated, a twist that made Nate's betrayal even more monstrous. How could I have been so blind to the man I thought I knew? Back at home, the silence was deafening. Nate had left, his absence a gaping void in the house we had shared. I wandered from room to room, each space filled with memories that now felt tainted. My mind was a storm of anger, hurt, and confusion, each emotion crashing into the next. I found myself in the kitchen, staring at the table where we'd shared countless meals. The weight of everything pressed down on me, and I sank into a chair, my head in my hands. How had it come to this? How had my life unraveled so completely? The doorbell rang, jolting me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find Tessa, her expression a mix of concern and determination. She stepped inside, pulling me into a hug that I didn't know I needed until that moment. "Alara, I'm here," she said simply, her presence a balm to my frayed nerves. We sat together, and I filled her in on the latest revelations. Her eyes widened with each new detail, disbelief etched on her face. "I can't believe he's done this," she said, shaking her head. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted, my voice small. "I feel like I'm drowning." Tessa squeezed my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "You're not alone, Alara. We'll figure this out together." Her words were a lifeline, but the path ahead felt impossibly daunting. As we talked, I realized that my desire for revenge had given way to a deeper need for justice. Not just for myself, but for Emily and her unborn child. But just as I thought I was beginning to find my footing, another twist sent me spiraling. My phone buzzed with a message from Lorraine, her words a fresh blow to my fragile sense of stability. "Alara, I've just received some legal papers. Nate's trying to access my accounts," the message read. I stared at the screen, disbelief turning to anger. Even now, Nate was still trying to manipulate and deceive, his desperation driving him to new lows. It was a stark reminder of just how far he'd fallen, and how far I still had to go to protect myself and those around me. I called Lorraine, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and determination. "We need to stop him, Lorraine. He can't keep getting away with this." She agreed, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect us, Alara. We'll get through this." As I hung up, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I couldn't let Nate continue to wreak havoc on our lives. It was time to take decisive action, to ensure that he faced the consequences of his actions. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations and strategy sessions with Lorraine and Tessa. We gathered evidence, prepared statements, and fortified our defenses against Nate's attempts to further manipulate the situation. But as we worked, the weight of everything began to take its toll. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, the constant stress leaving me feeling frayed at the edges. Every time I thought I was making progress, another complication would arise, threatening to undo everything. One evening, as I sat alone in my living room, the enormity of it all crashed over me. I felt like I was fighting a battle I couldn't win, the odds stacked against me at every turn. The idea of justice felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by the relentless reality of Nate's deceit. In that moment, I realized I was at my lowest point. Path to reclaiming my life seemed impossibly long, the obstacles insurmountable. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, a small voice inside reminded me of the strength I'd found in Lorraine, Tessa, and even myself. I took a deep breath, the air filling my lungs with renewed resolve. I couldn't give up, not now. I had to keep fighting, not just for myself, but for everyone Nate had hurt. It was time to turn the tide, to reclaim my life from the chaos and find a way forward. With that thought, I rose from the couch, determination hardening my resolve. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't let Nate's lies define me. I was stronger than this, and I would find a way to rise above it all. The day I discovered I was pregnant was a storm of emotions. I stood in the bathroom, staring at the positive test, my mind racing. The revelation was both a blessing and a burden, a new life amidst the chaos Nate had created. Forced me to reevaluate everything, to consider not just my future but that of my unborn child. I knew I had to confront Nate one last time, not just for me but for the life growing inside me. The thought of my child being dragged into his web of deceit was unbearable. I needed to ensure that Nate faced the consequences of his actions, not just for the past but for the future. With Lorraine and Tessa by my side, we arranged to meet Nate at a neutral location, a park we'd once loved, now a battlefield for truth. As we arrived, the air was thick with tension, the weight of what was to come pressing down on us. Nate was already there, pacing nervously, his usual confidence replaced by a palpable anxiety. As we approached, he stopped, his eyes flicking between us, searching for answers in our expressions. "Alara, what's this about?" he asked, trying to maintain a veneer of calm. I took a deep breath, the gravity of the moment settling over me. "We need to talk, Nate. About everything." His gaze shifted to Lorraine, then Tessa, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "I've already explained. I was desperate. I didn't mean for things to get out of hand." "Desperate." Lorraine's voice was sharp, cutting through the air. "You used me, Nate. You lied to everyone." Nate's eyes pleaded with her, but Lorraine's expression was steely, unmoved by his charm. "I thought I could fix it," he said, his voice cracking. I stepped forward, my resolve unwavering. "You can't fix this, Nate. You've hurt too many people." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine for a hint of forgiveness. "Alara, please. I love you. I never wanted to lose you." The words hung between us, but they felt hollow, a last-ditch effort to salvage something from the wreckage. "Love isn't enough, Nate. Not when it's built on lies." The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. I could see the wheels turning in Nate's mind, the realization that his charm and excuses would no longer save him. Then, in a move I hadn't anticipated, Nate turned to Lorraine, desperation coloring his voice. "Mom, you know I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to help Alara." Lorraine's expression softened, but only slightly. "I believed in you, Nate. But you need to take responsibility." Confrontation was reaching its peak, the tension crackling like electricity. I knew it was time to reveal my final card, the one thing that changed everything. "I'm pregnant, Nate," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "And I won't let our child be part of this mess." His face blanched, the color draining as the weight of my words hit him. "Pregnant?" he echoed, disbelief mingling with something akin to fear. "Yes," I confirmed, my hand instinctively resting on my stomach. "This changes everything." The revelation shifted the dynamic, adding a new layer of complexity to the confrontation. Nate's eyes darted between us, the reality of the situation sinking in. "I want to be there for you, for our child," he said, his voice tinged with desperation. I shook my head, the decision already made. "You need to prove you can change, Nate. Until then, I can't trust you." The words were a final blow, the culmination of everything we'd been through. Nate's shoulders slumped, the fight leaving him as the reality of his actions settled over him. As we stood there, the core themes of justice and protection came into sharp focus. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about ensuring a safe future for my child, about breaking free from the cycle of deceit. With Lorraine and Tessa beside me, I knew I wasn't alone. Together, we'd face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that we'd done everything we could to seek justice and protect those we loved. As we turned to leave, I felt a sense of closure, a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. Path ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, determined to build a life grounded in truth and resilience. In the months following the confrontation, life slowly began to find its rhythm again. The storm that Nate had unleashed left scars, but it also revealed unexpected blessings and new beginnings. Community Park Project, which had once felt overshadowed by personal chaos, became my sanctuary. It was a space where I could channel my energy and passion, creating something beautiful and lasting for others. Lorraine and I grew closer, our bond forged in the fires of betrayal and resilience. She became a constant presence, offering support and wisdom as I navigated the complexities of impending motherhood. Together, we found strength in each other, a newfound family built on honesty and shared experiences. One afternoon, as we sat together in the park, Lorraine turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "You know, Alara, I've been thinking a lot about the future." I nodded, sensing the weight of her words. "What about it?" "I've decided to include you and the baby in my will," she said, her voice steady and filled with warmth. The gesture took me by surprise, a testament to the depth of our connection. "Lorraine, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied, her eyes soft with affection. "You're family now, and I want to make sure you're taken care of." Her words were a balm, a reminder that even amidst the chaos, there were moments of grace and kindness. It was a resolution I hadn't anticipated, a final twist that solidified our bond and offered a sense of security for the future. As the days turned into weeks, the whispers of Nate's deceit faded, replaced by the laughter and life of the community I was helping to build. Park became a symbol of renewal, a place where people could come together and create new memories, just as I was doing. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I received a call from Harold Mercer. His voice was calm, a stark contrast to the turmoil of our last encounter. "Alara, I wanted to thank you," he said, gratitude evident in his tone. "For everything you did. It couldn't have been easy." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "It wasn't, but I'm glad we found the truth." "There's something else," he continued, a hint of hesitation in his voice. "We've decided to start a foundation in Emily's name, to help others who might be in similar situations." The news was unexpected, a resolution that added a layer of depth to the journey we'd all been on. "That's wonderful, Harold." Emily would be proud. As I hung up, I felt a sense of closure, a realization that even in the darkest times, light could be found. It was a reminder that justice wasn't just about punishment, but about healing and growth. With the foundation of my new life solidifying, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The themes of revenge and justice had evolved, revealing the true power of resilience and the importance of protecting those we love. But even as I embraced the future, I knew some questions would remain unanswered. Nate's actions had left a mark, a lingering reminder of the complexity of human relationships and the choices we make. As I walked through the park, the evening sun casting long shadows, I felt the gentle flutter of life within me. It was a promise of new beginnings, a testament to the strength I'd found in adversity. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had taught me the value of truth and the power of forgiveness. And as I looked toward the future, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with courage and hope. Path wasn't always clear, but with the support of those around me, I was confident in my ability to navigate whatever came next. The story of Nate's deceit had come to an end, but my story was just beginning, filled with the promise of new life and the enduring strength of the human spirit.